The glass shattered before anyone had a clue what was going on. Sophia didn't even see it coming. One moment, she was standing next to her husband, exchanging polite smiles in a room filled with influential people. The next moment, Dante Ricci's hand connected with her face. Hard. Silence fell. A cold, heavy silence that felt like everyone was holding their breath. No one moved. No one dared to speak. Because this wasn't just any man. This was Dante Ricci. And questioning him was simply not an option. But hold on. Here's the twist. He didn't strike her out of rage. He did it for her. A waitress. Right there, tray in hand. Completely frozen. Terrified. And in that instant, everything shifted, because what unfolded next was more than just a scandal. It was more than betrayal. It was something much deeper. Something that caught everyone in that room off guard. Not even Sophia saw it coming. And by the time she grasped the reality of it all, it was already too late. The city was always alive, never truly asleep. In its bustling heart, where the lights shone bright and money exchanged hands in hushed whispers, Dante Ricci ruled like a shadow that everyone respected but dared not disturb. His name wasn't spoken loudly. It was honored in silence and feared deeply. But within his world, within the walls of his home, things were a bit different. At least, that's what Sophia thought. Sophia Ricci wasn't one to make a scene. She wasn't dramatic or loud. She was the kind of woman who often went unnoticed until someone took a second glance. With her calm voice and gentle presence, she always seemed composed. Yet, she had this little quirk. Whenever something weighed on her mind, she'd smile instead of voicing her concerns. "Everything is fine," she'd assure, even when it was far from the truth, especially when it was. That was her flaw. She bore more than she let on. And Dante? He appreciated that. At least, he did at first. Their marriage didn't blossom from love. It was more of a business arrangement. Power intertwined with beauty, control mingling with silence. But somewhere along the way, something genuine began to sprout. Dante wasn't always distant. In those rare, quiet moments, he'd sit beside her and ask the simplest of questions. "Did you eat? Are you okay?" And Sophia would always nod, even when she wasn't, because deep down, she held on to a simple belief: if I just stay patient, things will improve. But what she didn't realize was that patience, when misplaced, can easily turn into weakness. And weakness? Well, it gets tested. That night was meant to be significant. A celebration. A lavish party in one of the city's most exclusive lounges. Crystal chandeliers, soft melodies, and the scent of expensive perfume filled the air. Everyone who mattered was there, politicians, businessmen. People who smiled with their lips, but never with their eyes. Sophia stood next to Dante, dressed in a way that perfectly complemented the elegance of the room. Simple, classy, quietly beautiful. She wasn't fond of the spotlight, but that night, it found her anyway, simply because she was Dante Ricci's wife. That title alone carried a certain weight. But there was something else in the air that night. Something unspoken. Something Sophia noticed, but chose to brush aside. And that turned out to be her mistake. It all began with a fleeting glance. Dante wasn't looking her way. Not even once. His focus was elsewhere. At first, Sophia didn't think much of it. He was busy after all, surrounded by important people. It made sense. But then, it happened again. And again. And again. Her gaze followed his. That's when she spotted her. The waitress. Nina Costa. She wasn't dressed like the others. No flashy jewelry. No bold makeup. Just simple. Clean. Natural. Yet there was something about her presence. Something quiet. Something different. And Dante noticed it. Not once. Not twice. Too many times to count. Sophia felt it. That nagging discomfort. That gentle warning in her chest. But she did what she always did. She brushed it off. "It's nothing," she reassured herself. "He's just distracted." But little did she know, sometimes the tiniest signs hold the biggest truths. The night went on. Laughter, drinks, conversations that seemed trivial but felt significant. Yet beneath it all, something was brewing. Slowly, quietly, dangerously. Nina walked past their table again. This time, even closer. Dante's gaze followed her, unashamed, and Sophia saw it clearly. No confusion, no doubt, just truth, raw, uncomfortable truth. And for the first time that night, her smile faded, just a little, but she still said nothing, because Sophia had trained herself to remain calm, to stay silent, to dodge conflict. But silence doesn't prevent a storm. It only postpones the inevitable. Minutes ticked by, then more minutes, and then Dante rose to his feet. No explanation given, not a glance at Sophia. He straightened his suit and walked away, not toward the exit, not toward the guests, but straight to Nina, the waitress, and Sophia felt it. That moment, that shift, that quiet crack in her chest. But she stayed still. She didn't utter a word. She just observed, because deep down, she still believed. It's nothing, but that belief was on the verge of shattering everything, because what Sophia didn't realize was that this night was never meant to end in peace, and what Dante was about to do next would not only humiliate her, it would fracture something within her that would never heal the same way again. But the harsh reality? This was just the tip of the iceberg. It was merely the first indication, and Sophia was far from prepared for what lay ahead. But everything was about to shift dramatically. Dante kept walking, not pausing for even a moment. Sophia watched him glide through the crowd as if everything around him was his to command. And, in a way, it was. People shifted slightly as he passed by. Conversations hushed, and eyes followed his every move. But he was oblivious to it all. His gaze locked on one person, Nina, the waitress. That's when Sophia felt a tightness in her chest. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just a quiet warning that she chose to ignore. That was her usual way of dealing with things. That's just how he is, she reassured herself. He notices people. Yet, deep down, she sensed this was different. Nina was busy placing drinks on another table when Dante approached her. He said something, his voice low and calm, too calm. Nina looked up, clearly taken aback. She hadn't expected him to speak first, especially not to a waitress. Sophia couldn't catch their words, but she could see enough. Nina shook her head slightly, maintaining her professionalism, trying to stay in her lane. But Dante didn't back off. He leaned in a bit closer and whispered something else. This time, Nina hesitated. That small pause didn't escape Sophia's notice, and it felt off. Maybe I'm just overthinking this, she murmured to herself. But then it got worse. Dante reached for a glass from Nina's tray, moving slowly and deliberately. Their fingers brushed for just a moment, but that was all it took. Nina quickly pulled her hand back, too quickly, and Dante, he smiled, not the polite smile he reserved for guests, nor the control one Sophia was used to. This smile was different, interested. That's when Sophia felt it hit her, clear as day. It wasn't confusion or doubt. It was something sharper, something colder, jealousy. But she stayed put, silent. Over the years, she had picked up a few lessons. Don't react too quickly. Keep your cool. Don't make a scene. That was where she went wrong. Because sometimes not reacting can feel like giving permission. The atmosphere in the room shifted. Slower now. Heavier. It was as if the night itself was changing course. Sophia tried to pull her mind away. She reached for her glass, took a sip, but her gaze, it kept drifting back. Dante was still there, still talking, still locked in. And Nina? She seemed more uncomfortable now, more than before. Her body language shifted, her shoulders tensed. She looked around, as if wishing someone would intervene. But no one did, because no one dares to step in. When Dante Ricci is in the mix, time dragged on, but it felt like an eternity. He finally took a step back, but instead of leaving, he said something that made Nina freeze in place. And Sophia noticed it. That moment, that change. Nina nodded slowly, reluctantly, and then she followed him. Not far, just a few steps. But it was enough. Enough for people to take notice. Enough for whispers to start. And Sophia caught them. Soft, low, but cutting. Did you see that? Isn't that his wife right there? Why is he? She stopped listening, because suddenly the room felt different. Smaller, colder, heavier, and the phone on the table next to her buzzed. Once, then again, then again. Sophia glanced at it. Unknown number. She frowned slightly, ignored it. It stopped, then started up again. Persistent, almost urgent, but she didn't answer, because right now, her focus was elsewhere. That was her mistake, because that call wasn't just a coincidence, and she would come to regret ignoring it. But at that moment, she had no idea. Her attention shifted back to Dante and Nina. They were getting closer now, too close for comfort. Dante spoke again, but this time his tone was different. It was less calm and more demanding. Nina shook her head, again, but this time it was slower, more uncertain. That's when it happened. Dante grabbed her wrist, not in a violent way, but with a firm, possessive grip. The tray in her other hand trembled, and the glasses clinked together, one almost toppling over. People started to notice. Now they were really watching. Sophia stood up, slowly, her heart racing. But she wasn't angry. Not yet. Just unsettled. This isn't right, she thought. But even then, she hesitated. Stepping in would mean confrontation, and Sophia always avoided that. But sometimes, avoiding something only makes it worse. Dante leaned in closer to Nina, whispering something that no one else could hear. Nina's expression shifted instantly. Fear, real fear. That's when Sophia finally took a step forward. But just as she was about to reach them, the music cut off abruptly. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned toward them, because something significant was about to unfold, and Sophia was walking right into it. That was the moment everything began to unravel. The silence was deafening. It felt unnatural, almost forced, as if the very room was holding its breath. Sophia paused mid-step, just for a heartbeat, because suddenly every gaze in the room shifted from Dante to her. Confusion washed over her. She had no idea why. But soon she would find out. Dante let go of Nina's wrist, doing it slowly, deliberately, as if nothing had happened at all. Yet Nina remained still, frozen in place, her breathing uneven and her grip on the tray far too tight. Sophia noticed something odd, something small but significant. Nina wasn't looking at Dante anymore. Her eyes were fixed on Sophia. And that look, it wasn't guilt or pride. It was something else entirely. Something that Sophia couldn't quite grasp at that moment, but it sent a wave of unease through her. Sophia took a step closer, each footfall feeling heavier than the last. Her mind raced with questions. What's happening? Why is everyone staring? What did I miss? But no answers came, only the oppressive silence. Then, finally, Dante turned to her. His eyes locked onto hers, cold and unreadable, for a fleeting moment. Sophia felt a stranger looking back at her, not the man she shared her life with, not the one she stood up for. Someone else entirely, and that thought terrified her. But she pressed on, because turning back now was simply not an option. What's going on? She asked softly, her voice steady and controlled. Just like always. Dante didn't respond right away. He glanced at her, then at Nina, and back to her again. And then he laughed. It was a quiet laugh, but it echoed in the stillness. That laugh, it felt off. It was intentional, calculated. Then he said it, something simple, something small, yet it shifted everything. Apologize. Sophia blinked, confusion washing over her. What? To her, Dante replied calmly. Sophia frowned slightly. To who? Dante gestured toward Nina. The waitress. The atmosphere in the room changed again, a palpable tension tightening the air. Sophia looked at Nina, then back at Dante. For a brief moment, she thought this might be a joke, but his expression told her otherwise. You want me to apologize to her? Sophia asked slowly. Yes. No hesitation, no further explanation, just that. And something inside Sophia paused. Not broke, not yet, just paused, because none of this made sense. What did I do? She asked, a simple, clear, reasonable question. But Dante didn't answer directly. He stepped closer, Too close, lowering his voice just enough for those nearby to hear. You disrespected her. Sophia's brows knitted together. I didn't even speak to her. That's the problem, Dante replied. And that made even less sense. But wait! Here's where everything starts to feel off. Sophia turned slightly toward Nina again, searching for clarity, for something, anything. That's when she noticed it. Nina's hands were shaking, not lightly, not subtly, but shaking like someone who didn't want to be in this moment, like someone who hadn't asked for this. Suddenly, a thought flickered through Sophia's mind. Quick, sharp, uncomfortable. What if this isn't about me? But she pushed it aside because it didn't fit. Not yet. And Dante took a small step back, giving her some space, but also setting the scene, because now everyone was watching, no longer hiding. No more whispers, just eyes on them, focused, intense, waiting. Go on, Dante urged, his voice steady, too steady. Apologize. Sophia stood her ground. Her heart raced, but her face? Calm, collected. That was her nature. But inside, something was stirring, something risky. I won't apologize for something I didn't do, she replied softly. Firm, yet respectful. That should have been enough. It should have ended there. But it didn't. Dante wasn't just asking. He was probing, and Sophia had just stumbled on that test. His expression shifted, just a bit, but it was clear. His jaw clenched. His gaze turned steely. And in that instant, the room felt colder, much colder. Then he moved forward again, this time quicker, and before Sophia could even react, his hand shot out, fast, sharp, unstoppable, and the sound rang out, clear, loud, final. Sophia's had snapped with the force. Her body went rigid. The room fell silent once more. But this time, it wasn't anticipation. It was shock, pure shock. No one saw that coming. Not like this. Not here. Not in front of everyone. Sophia stood frozen. Didn't speak. Didn't react right away. Because her mind had gone blank. Totally blank. All she could feel was the heat on her cheek and the weight of a truth she was just starting to grasp. But that wasn't even the worst part. Because what happened next would change everything forever. The sound of the slap didn't just fade away. It lingered, like it had etched itself into the very air. Sophia stood frozen. Not right away. Her head still tilted from the impact. Her cheek throbbed. But the real hurt, that was just beginning. Because now, everyone was watching. No more whispers. No more pretending. Just eyes. Dozens of them. Fixed. Heavy. Judging. And in that moment, Sophia understood something. This wasn't just anger. This wasn't a simple mistake. This was deliberate. But she didn't know why. Not yet. Slowly, very slowly, she turned her head back, facing Dante. Her eyes locked onto his again. And this time, there was no confusion there. Only clarity. Cold, sharp clarity. You slapped me, she said softly. Not a question. A statement. Dante didn't deny it. Didn't apologize. Didn't offer an explanation. He just adjusted his cuff, as if nothing significant had just occurred. And that hurt more than the slap itself, because it meant one thing. He didn't think it was important. But wait, it gets worse. Dante turned slightly toward the crowd, then back to Sophia. And then he said it, loud enough, clear enough, for disrespecting her. Again, that same line, that same nonsense. But now, it carried weight, because it was backed by action. And suddenly, the room wasn't just watching. It was reacting. Some people looked away, uncomfortable. Some exchanged glances. Others just observed, as if this was entertainment. And Sophia felt it, that shift from person to spectacle. And something inside her started to crack. Not break, not yet, but crack. What did I do? She asked again. This time, her voice had changed. Still calm, but it felt heavier, more real. And for just a moment, Dante didn't say a word. He simply stared at her, as if he were weighing something, testing something. Then his gaze shifted to Nina, and that's when everything shifted. "Tell her," Dante urged. Nina froze completely. Her eyes widened just a bit. "No," she whispered, almost too quiet to hear. But Dante caught it, and his expression darkened. "Tell her," he insisted, this time with a tone that was anything but calm. It was commanding. Nina's hand began to tremble again, worse than before. She glanced at Sophia, then down at the floor and back at Dante. She felt caught, trapped, and Sophia noticed it clearly now. This wasn't just power. It was pressure. It was control. Suddenly, that unsettling thought from earlier resurfaced, stronger than ever. What if this isn't about me? And this time, she didn't brush it aside. Something felt very wrong. Very, very wrong. Nina swallowed hard, tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. She tried again. I didn't mean to cause... Say it properly," Dante cut in, his voice cold and sharp. That's when Sophia took a step forward. Just one step, but it changed everything. "Stop," she said, not loud but firm. For the first time that night, Dante looked taken aback, not by her words, but by her tone, because Sophia never interrupted, ever. But this time, she did, and that shift, that small change, it mattered. "What's going on?" Sophia asked, this time not directing her question at Dante, but at Nina, directly. And Nina met her gaze, really met it, and in that moment, Sophia found herself facing something entirely new. Not fear, not discomfort, but guilt. A deep, heavy, painful guilt. And that shifted everything. Because guilt, it signals that truth is lurking somewhere. And Sophia was on the verge of uncovering it. "I didn't want this," Nina murmured softly. "I swear." But she didn't know. Sophia felt her heart sink a little. "What didn't you want?" she inquired. And then there was a pause. A long, stretching pause. And then Nina finally spoke. He's been talking to me. Silence. Complete silence. Before tonight. And that hit harder than any slap. Because suddenly, everything began to connect. Quickly, painfully. Dante's glances, his focus, his confidence. This wasn't out of the blue. This wasn't random. This had been brewing. Behind her back. And Sophia felt it. That realization. That shift. That deep, sinking understanding. But she remained still. Kept her composure. Because now, she needed the whole truth. "How long?" she asked. Her voice was steady. But her chest, tight. Very tight. Nina hesitated. Then, "A few weeks." And that was it. That was the moment. The moment everything inside Sophia stopped pretending and started seeing clearly, painfully, fully. But Dante, he didn't seem ashamed, didn't look guilty. If anything, he appeared annoyed, like this wasn't unfolding as he had planned. And that's when Sophia grasped something else. This wasn't about the waitress. This wasn't about disrespect. This was about control. And control was slipping. What happened next, no one was ready for. The room felt surreal, almost like it was fading away. Time seemed to stretch. Voices became distant. And even the music that had stopped earlier felt like a figment of imagination. What mattered now was the truth. It was finally surfacing piece by piece, painfully. But she didn't know how deep it really went. Sophia turned her gaze to Dante, truly looking at him for the first time. This time, she wasn't trying to decipher him. She was seeing him for who he was. Clearly, without excuses, without any softness, and without denial. "You've been seeing her?" Sophia asked, her tone straight and direct, devoid of any emotion. That alone shifted the atmosphere. Dante had braced himself for anger, for tears, for some kind of reaction. But this calmness, it was unsettling. "It's not what you think," he replied, a classic, simple avoidance. But Sophia didn't flinch. She didn't argue or push back. Instead, she asked one thing. "What is it then?" That question left no space for evasion. Dante took a slight breath, glanced around, and felt the weight of the attention, the eyes on him, the silence. For a moment, he hesitated. This was no longer a private matter. It was out in the open, and his grip on control was slipping. "She means nothing," he finally said, and that was the worst thing he could have uttered. He had reduced everything. Her, the situation, the truth, to nothing. Sophia felt that final crack, that shift. It wasn't pain or sadness. It was something else, something stronger. Clarity. Cold, powerful clarity. But wait, this is where everything shifts. Sophia turned to Nina, not with anger or blame, but with calmness. "Do you want this?" she asked. That question sliced through everything, because for the first time, Nina had a choice, a real one, and she shook her head right away. "No." Tears were starting to form now. "I tried to stay away. I swear." And Sophia believed her, because she could see it. This wasn't about ambition. This wasn't manipulation. This was someone trapped in a situation she couldn't control. And that was significant. It mattered more than Dante understood, because now the narrative had changed. This was no longer about betrayal. It was about truth and power and who truly held it. Sophia turned back to Dante, and this time her eyes were different, stronger, sharper, unfamiliar. "You embarrass me," she said softly. Simple, clear. "And you think that makes you powerful?" Dante frowned slightly, because this wasn't the response he anticipated. "Not at all. You're overreacting," he said. And that was the final blunder, because dismissing someone after breaking them doesn't control them. It liberates them. And Sophia? She was free now, completely. "I'm overreacting," she echoed gently. Then she smiled, but not her usual smile. Not the quiet, patient one. This one was different. Final. "You hit me," she said, in front of everyone. Pause. For her, pause again. "And you think I'm the one overreacting?" Silence. Heavy, unavoidable silence. And for the first time that night, Dante didn't have control over it. Sophia stepped back, not away, but out of reach, out of his space. And that movement alone said everything. "I'm done," she said. Simple. No drama. No shouting. Just truth. And that truth, it hit harder than anything else that night. Dante felt it. That shift, that loss, that moment when something irreversible takes place. But he didn't quite grasp yet how deep it ran. "Sophia," he began, but she lifted her hand just a bit, not to strike, just to pause him. And he did, because even he sensed it. That change, that power. "Don't," she said, softly, but with finality. And then she turned and started to walk away. From him, from the room, from everything she had been holding on to. And no one stopped her, because no one could. In that moment, Dante Ricci wasn't just a quiet wife anymore. She had transformed into something else. Something stronger. Something unbreakable. And Dante? He stood there, watching. For the first time, not in control. Not powerful. Just still, because what he had just lost, he didn't fully comprehend yet. But he would, very soon. And in that moment, everything changed forever. The night didn't wrap up with a bang. It wrapped up in silence. The kind of silence that follows something you can't take back. Sophia didn't sprint away. She didn't hurry. She simply walked, step by step, out of the room, out of the lights, out of the gaze of those who had witnessed everything unfold. And for the first time in ages, she wasn't bottling anything up. No forced grin. No quiet endurance. No pretending. Just clarity. Cold. Clean. Real. But she didn't know that this moment, this very moment, would alter not just her life, but his as well. Outside, the air felt different. Cooler. Honest. She took a slow breath, like someone who had been submerged for too long and was finally surfacing for air. Her cheeks still throbbed, but it didn't matter anymore, because that pain was fleeting. What she gained tonight was everlasting. Freedom. And inside that room, Dante Ricci remained frozen. Long after Sophia had gone, people began to stir again. Slowly, whispers returned. But they weren't the same whispers. They weren't about power. They weren't about fear. They were about him. Did you see what he did? She walked away. He didn't stop her. And that last one, that last whisper, rang the loudest because it was true. He didn't stop her, not because he couldn't, but because he didn't grasp what was happening. Not yet. Dante turned slightly, glancing toward the exit, the spot where Sophia had vanished, and something unfamiliar settled in his chest. Not anger, not control, something else, something unsettling. Loss. But wait, here's the part he didn't see coming. Nina was still there, standing quietly, shaken, but present. And for the first time, Dante glanced at her, but there was no spark, no focus, nothing at all, because now she wasn't the center of his universe. She was just there. I'm sorry, Nina murmured softly. And this time it wasn't fear. It was real. Dante didn't reply. He didn't even turn his gaze toward her, because suddenly everything that once felt so crucial just didn't matter anymore. She means nothing. His own words bounced back in his mind, and now they had a different tone. Hollow, empty. If she meant nothing, then what did Sophia mean to him? That question, that simple yet dangerous question, began to shatter something deep inside him. Dante let out a slow breath. Then he walked away. Not toward Nina, not toward the crowd, but straight to the exit, because now he needed to figure something out, something he had pushed aside for far too long. Outside, Sophia was gone. Of course she was, and for the first time in years. Dante had no idea where she had gone. That was unheard of. He always knew, always had control, always had a grip on things, but not this time. And that feeling of losing control? It unsettled him more than anything else that night. Days slipped by, quietly, but not in peace. The house felt different. Too big, too empty, too silent. Sophia wasn't there. No soft footsteps, no calming presence, no gentle voice saying, "It's fine," because it wasn't fine. Not anymore. One evening, Dante found himself sitting alone, in the same chair, in the same space. But everything felt foreign because she was missing, and that absence, it wasn't subtle. It was deafening, painfully deafening. But she didn't know he was beginning to grasp it. Too late, always too late. He replayed that night in his mind, over and over. The slap, the silence, the way she looked at him, not with pain, not with anger, but with clarity. And that look haunted him, because it wasn't fleeting. It was final. And then the realization struck him, hard, clear, unavoidable. That moment, that one action, it was her last chance. And he shattered it, completely, irreversibly, because Sophia had always been the patient one, always forgiving, always there. And he mistook that for weakness. But it wasn't weakness. It was a choice. And now she had made a different one, a final one. Somewhere else in the city, Sophia stood in front of a mirror, a different place, a new life beginning. Her face was calm, but her eyes, stronger, clearer, awake. She gently touched her cheek. The mark was fading, just like the past, slowly disappearing. But the lesson, that would remain, and it would stay forever. Because Sophia had learned something that most people realize too late. Silence doesn't protect you. It only postpones the moment you break free. And when that moment arrives, everything changes. She picked up her phone, paused, then set it down again. No calls, no messages, no turning back, because forward was the only way left to go. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid of it. Back in that quiet house, Dante sat still, holding his phone, staring at her name, not calling, not texting, because deep down he understood something simple, something painful. Some distances can't be bridged, no matter who you are, no matter how powerful you think you are, because some actions don't just hurt, they end things, completely. And finally, Dante Ricci got it. Power isn't control. Power is knowing what not to destroy. And he had destroyed the one thing that truly mattered. And in that moment, everything changed forever. Sometimes Just one moment can change everything, not because it was loud, but because it marked a turning point. Sophia shed her fear, while Dante lost his grip on control. In that instant, they both discovered a hard truth. Some mistakes don't offer a second chance, and sometimes silence is a sign of weakness. Instead, it can be the first step toward freedom. So, I ask you, what would you have done?